Hey, what's going on, everyone? It is Nick Skevich of Daily Fantasy Winners, and this is week one of the 2016 NFL season. You probably remember me most from the Tee to Green episodes I've been doing for PGA DFS throughout 2016. It's time to switch gears, for at least for myself, toward the gridiron and start doing some NFL videos for you guys. So one of my specialties when it comes to daily fantasy or fantasy football in general is evaluating rookies and who will make immediate impacts. There are a lot of variables to look at when trying to evaluate a player's expected fantasy points when it comes to the rookies. Since we only have the college data and the college footage to go off of, or anything we may have seen preseason, so it's pretty limited information that we have to go off of. So for this, I'm going to give one player who I think is being a little bit undervalued heading into the 2016 season, and week one specifically. Then I'll also give you another player who I think is being overvalued and just a little bit too much hype on this player just heading into week one specifically. So with that, the first player I think, or for the player I think is being undervalued here heading into week one is Sterling Shepard. Now, to be fair, I have heard some buzz about him, of course, and there's been obviously enough talk about him in the daily fantasy community and just, in the Twitter world and everything like that. But in comparison to all the popular plays and what I'm seeing out there, I haven't really heard that much a buzz about him overall, and so I think he's getting overlooked some and has some value here. So some people out there, I've been hearing them say, well, he's a rookie and this guy was only a second-round pick, and they kind of want to take a wait-and-see approach. Well, so what? Guys like Allen Robinson, Jordy Nelson, Alshon Jeffrey, Jarvis Landry, they're all second-round draft picks. Antonio Brown, sixth-round draft pick, best wide receiver in the NFL most likely, and Julian Edelman, seventh-round pick. So not really too much into the whole prospect thing and what round they were picked in as far as who can make an immediate impact DFS-wise. And I'll just say this for daily fantasy perception, and this is just generally speaking for any sport daily fantasy-wise, but it's often too high on the top prospects out of the gate right away for them, and it's not high enough on the solid prospects who are put in position to succeed. And of course, like I said, I think Shepard is being put in position to succeed right away. This is a wide receiver who can run every route in the book. He'll make the tough catches over the middle. And even though he is only 5'10", we saw him make plenty of outstanding catches on deeper routes by simply out-jumping the taller corners. His hands are outstanding. He can rip the ball away from defenders. He very rarely drops any passes, and his athleticism is simply superb. And then as for why he's good in week one, he is expected to be the clear number 2 wide receiver opposite of Odell Beckham, and he should get a vast majority of snaps this year. And also, since this is a really important point actually, since Ben McAdoo became the offensive coordinator in 2014, Eli Manning's completion percentage has gone up from the upper 50s to the lower 60s. Manning's attempting about 6 more pass attempts per game, and he's thrown 65 touchdowns total over the last 2 seasons. Now, obviously, Ben McAdoo is the head coach of the Giants now, and replacing Tom Coughlin, who I think was a little bit underappreciated, and I hate to see him get fired the way he did, but topic for another day. But when you do have a new coach who is being promoted within the franchise, and it's especially coming the offensive side, we shouldn't see too many things differently schematically offensively. So I think this is more essentially a star player coming in, or a very good prospect who's coming into a high volume passing team that should succeed very well here out of the gate. And ultimately down the road, as far as what kind of total numbers he'll put up in 2016, I really would not rule out a 1,000-yard season for Sterling Shepard this year. And obviously Odell Beckham will still get plenty of yardage and touchdowns and everything like that. ODB will probably still have 1,500 yards, something like that, and be the star we saw last year. But Sterling Shepard, I think, is going to be a great complement for him, and the Giants passing game is going to be very dangerous this year. Now, as far as the matchup is concerned, going up against the Dallas Cowboys, the Cowboys defense, as we all know, was pretty mediocre last year, but it had a particularly weak secondary, allowing 7.2 yards per pass attempt last year. I don't expect them to be improved at all this year, especially with no Tony Romo earlier in the year, because I think the Giants are going to get some extra plays with his absence. Now that Dak Prescott is taking over for Tony Romo here in this week one contest, and obviously moving forward here for at least the next month or two, I think you're going to see a few more 3-and-outs here, especially early on once we see Prescott go up against the number 1 defense versus some of the number 2s and number 3s he saw in preseason. And as we saw with the over-under in this game, it came down 3 points from 49 to 46 when the Romo injury happened. But the one thing to keep in mind here is the last 7 times the Giants and the Cowboys have played, the point total has gone over the mark. And the over-unders in the last 7 contests have been on average in the upper 40. So just something to keep in mind, kind of a little bonus feature for the, for the upper, or for the over on the point total. So these teams historically have scored quite a bit against one another, and I really expect that to come from the Giants side this time. Heading here into week 1. And just the bottom line here to wrap this up about Sterling is I think his ownership will be, generally speaking, on the lower side. Won't be extremely low, but it'll be on the lower side, and there will be some value there. And he's a really good option in those bigger tournaments, and definitely a very affordable price as well to boot. Now, as for the rookie who I think is being overvalued some, I'm going to go back to something I said a little bit earlier in the video about DFS and public perception often being too high on the top prospects out of the gate. So coincidentally, we're keeping this in the same game, Dallas versus New York. It just happens to be on Dallas this time, and it is Ezekiel Elliott. Now, to be clear, I think Zeke will be a very good running back in the NFL here, in the years to come, maybe even later this season. But people have Zeke as one of the top, if not the top running back in fantasy heading into 2016. Everyone is still remembering the 1,845-yard season DeMarco Murray had in 2014 behind the really good Dallas offensive line. Now, obviously, the Cowboys' offensive line should still be pretty good this year, but we have to remember where Zeke is coming from here. He absolutely torched his defenses his sophomore and junior seasons at Ohio State under Urban Meyer. But remember, Ohio State runs a scheme that involves being in the shotgun all the time, going up-tempo, zone read concepts, and a lot of plays where he and the offensive line are moving side to side. The Cowboys are pretty much the exact opposite of that. Remember when DeMarco struggled against Philly in 2015 and how rough it was? Under Chip Kelly, it was a completely different scheme that did not fit DeMarco's game. And look, you can make fun of Chip, the GM, for bringing him in originally. I understand that point. But I still think Chip is an outstanding coach, was let go in Philly too early, and basically had one bad season. And I think we're going to see, actually, Chip have success down the road with the 49ers. And honestly, on a side note, I think Carlos Hyde is actually a very sneaky play this year, just generally speaking here down the road. And I think Hyde's a perfect fit, actually, for what Chip Kelly most likely wants to do. But separate topic for another time. Just wanted to throw in a little bonus feature there. But bringing this back to Zeke, I'm not saying he's going to be a bust overall or he'll be terrible this year, just to be clear about this. I think he'll be good. I'm simply saying that there is a learning curve here. He is coming into a completely different scheme. He got limited preseason action, and he just won't be as dominant as people expect him to be right away. And obviously, he's been a first-round draft pick in standard fantasy leagues, on pretty much every platform. Out there, and I would pump the brakes a little bit on that. He should be, a very good player, but not quite up that high. So basically, instead of like a 1,500 plus yard season that I think some people are expecting, I would expect something more in the 1,000 yard range for Zeke. But again, like I said, as he gains more experience in the system, we'll see him progress and be an elite back. I think that most people are expecting. And so the bottom line for this, as far as playing him in daily fantasy, it obviously will certainly depend on how many lineups you are making. But in terms of the GPP standpoint, and I really wouldn't even advise you using them in cash formats. But as far as GPPs just go, I would really limit your exposure to Zeke for week 1. And if you're only making a few lineups, I would just fade him altogether. That would be my advice. So that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. And if you like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as you can follow Daily Fantasy Winners on Twitter at DFSnerd. You can follow me on Twitter as well at Nick Yuskevich. Thanks and good luck.